Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 8 in my portrait lesson series, and this will also be the final video for this series. And in this video we're going to show how to finish out a portrait. I'll show how to add the final highlights and all the final little refining details. If you want to follow along painting traditionally, then check out part 1 in this series where I show you all the paints and the materials that I use. We're going to be using the Infinite Painter app and we're going to go ahead and start working on the hat. And we want to go ahead and darken under the brim, probably using yellow ochre. And I'm using the Angelo brush set on small, and you can use your script brush or a small round brush if you're following along traditionally. And we just want to go ahead and add a little bit darker underneath the brim and go ahead and make your strokes rounded so that we show the roundness of the hat. Throw in a little bit of blue right there on the brim on the right side to show the reflected highlight of her shirt. And then go ahead and use some white with yellow ochre in it to go ahead and show the highlight on the brim. Highlight a little bit on the crown of the hat as well, and get rid of that stray mark that I have on my painting. And go ahead and add it on the edges. And just make the hat look more rounded because we want to try to give it the overall 3D shape of it and make it look, we don't want it to look flat. So you go ahead and add a little bit of dark on the left side of the picture as well on her hat because it's in shadow on that side. So we go ahead and add that. Go ahead and save frequently now because you're getting almost to the end. And then we want to go ahead and add the pattern to her hat. So I'm using a gray color, probably ultramarine blue with burnt sienna mixed together, and just go ahead and make indications of holes on her hat. You can put a little bit of some hair there under her hat. Work on the hair some more. I'm using some background color here to get rid of the original sketch that I have. And we want to work on her braid a little bit and using ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and add a little bit of white there to go ahead and add the gray color to her braid and to the hair along her temples. And just go ahead and use a very small brush and just make really thin strokes because we want to make it look like hair. And go ahead and work on the shapes around her ear, on the temples there. Just adding the final little touches to the hair. And then I want to go ahead and add a little bit of some blue to the sweater. We want to make it a sweater texture. And just go ahead and do that underneath her braid and kind of around on the collar there. And then smooth that in because we don't want it to look too rough because then that doesn't look natural. And smooth around all on the patterns because you don't want this to look too rough, but you want it to kind of blend in a little bit. And we also want to kind of darken everything under her chin here. We don't want it to look too light. And I'm going to go ahead and I worked on the collar right there and added some more texture there, and you also want to add a little bit to the white right there. Add some blue strokes there just to give it kind of a sweater-like texture there. And don't make the strokes too dark or anything, but you just want a little bit of a texture effect. And then I'm using the airbrush here to darken the sweater even further. And you can do this painting along traditionally. Just take a really thin glaze of blue paint and throw a lot of water in it and just run it over the top of your already dried layers of your paint, and that will kind of darken down the highlights and make it look a little bit more shadowy. And we want to do this also on the brim of the hat. So I'm using probably a burnt umber color, and you want to do that on the crown as well. We're just trying to make shadows here, and I've added some of that color to the face and the neck here. We just want, and you're using a glaze to do this, even traditionally, like I said, a really thin mixture, and just kind of dry brush it on. You want it real, you don't want it opaque, you want it real thin so that the bottom layers can show through here. And you want to go ahead and just adjust the shadows of her chin a little bit here. That's what I'm doing. Adding a little bit of the wrinkles to her neck. Just trying to make final details and just small final tweaks. We don't want anything big or anything major. We just want to make little details here, little tweaks. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to her hat again, and I'm smoothing it out a little bit here because we want to make it look more rounded again and make it look more 3D-ish, because sometimes lines will flatten things out, so you want to kind of smooth those in, but you still want to give the straw texture of the hat. And then working on the earring here, you want to highlight the earring. It's a gold earring, so you want to go ahead and put a light yellow color with a lot of white in it and just kind of smooth it out. And you want the earring on the right side to have the biggest highlight because it's catching the most light. And you also want to put a little bit of highlight on the left side earring because it's catching a little bit of light, but you don't want too much because it's in shadow. And then I'm putting a little bit of reflected light on her chin. I'm also working on the highlights in her eyes, just widening them out just a little bit. You want to use a really tiny brush for this. And you want to work on just places around on the face that need a little bit more tweaking, just a little bit more refinement here. You want to step back and look at your portrait and see what you need to add. I'm adding the final highlights here on her nose and her cheeks. And this will give her face the rounded look that she needs. And you probably don't want pure white. You want white with a little bit of yellow in it. Add that a little bit on her lips as well, and just smudge that in because you want the final highlight, but you don't want it really, really bright. You want it to kind of softly blend into her face. I'm also adding a little bit of that to her chin. Working on the edge of her sweater a little bit here, just a little bit more refinements. Working on the edge of her chin. Again, I keep widening it out just a little bit because she's got a round face. So we want to try to go ahead and make sure that we capture that. And then I'm just skipping around and working on different parts of the portrait. And then you step back and you look at it and you compare and decide what else you need to add to it. And I'm also working on the crown of the hat. I cut it down just a little bit by using the background color. Also, I wanted to round it just a little bit more. And you can just use the background color and leave the strokes kind of rough because we want a painterly background for this anyway. And then I'm adding a little bit more shadow along the side of her nose. And I'm adding the blemishes to her face because skin is not perfect. It has blemishes and everything, and you want to add that to your portrait. You don't want to make them real noticeable, but you still want to put them on and add that to the skin so that it doesn't look plastic-like. And so go ahead and add them and cut the opacity down if you're using Infinite Painter, and just use a thin paint mixture if you're following along traditionally. And just kind of smudge those in. You want them there, but you don't want them to be real noticeable. And this will give your skin a more realistic look and make it look like a real person and not a doll. And then I want to go ahead and kind of darken the white in her eyes there because it's not that bright. So we want to kind of bring that down just a little bit with maybe a grayish color or blue. And then I'm going to go ahead and work a little bit on her chin, the collar again. Just kind of step back and look and see what you need to add to make it look more like your reference photo. And go ahead and add a little bit of reflected highlight around on her chin, and add the wrinkles and stuff on her neck, and then I'm getting pretty close to calling it good, because you don't need to play with it and pester it till you totally mess it up. Just, get it as good as you think you can, and then stop playing with it. And I know that's hard to know when, but you just have to just look at it and decide, okay, I don't need to add anything more. This is as good as I can get it. And then go ahead and make sure you save it, since you've got it fixed the way you want it. This is the end of my portrait lesson series, and I wanted to give you a few of the names of people that I really like their books. John Sandon does Portraits from Life in 29 Steps, and this is a really good book and has helped me a lot in portrait painting. Also, Portrait Painting Atelier by Suzanne Brooker is a very good book, and she has all kinds of information and details in there to help you with portrait painting. Portraits in Oil, The Van Wyck Way by Helen Van Wyck is also one of my favorite books, and she used to have a series on PBS. Her books are still available used, and you can get them for a pretty good price. Also, I think John Sandon's books are also available used, and I know you can get them for a pretty good price at Amazon. The Portrait Painting Atelier you can actually get new from Amazon. And so I'll go ahead and leave my Amazon affiliate links in the description below if you want to check these books out. I highly recommend them because they have actually helped me a lot with my portrait painting. So stay tuned for a brand new series, and thank you all for watching. Thank you for all your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.